Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partners in crime, Anthony Prohaska and Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how does that Uncle Jumbo's Victory Tonic smell?
Oh, it smells so good. Shutout Jumbos?
Oh,
Anybody for some shutout Jumbos? This is crazy. 2 shutouts to start a year. I love this team right now.
Half our games are shutouts. So you are joining us because you are listening in to our post-game show of the Buffalo Bills beating the Houston Texans 40-0, and maybe in the rare instance, a 40-0 game that could have been much worse. I'm pretty sure that the rainstorm saved the Texans from a 56-0 game.
Probably.
Anthony, what were your initial thoughts on this delightful outing?
That was a good point. Like, that was one of them. Like, we were kind of still inefficient on offense and still won by 40. Yeah. Like, we weren't great in the red zone. I think, again, to your point, though, a lot of that had to do with the weather. There was legitimately, like, a driving rain and windstorm at points, and it was tough. But, yeah, I think the fact that we're still able to put up so many points is a large part credit to the defense for continuing to give the ball back to the O. But, yeah, a little bit inefficient, but still 40 points put up. And I just also want to make a statement that, you know, today is October 3rd, 2021. I think this day should forever be remembered as Jaquan Johnson Day here and going forward. I just want to make that statement.
We'll have time for that. It wasn't an
There's
accident.
a chance that it could be the one day.
It might be the one, like the single
hater.
One. Jaquan Johnson
Such
Day.
a hater.
I like him. Him.
But at the end of the day, even if it's a 1-for-1, he's still batting 1,000.
It is. It's amazing
Stats,
performance.
Analytics.
Hashtag analytics. Aaron, what were your initial thoughts on a game like this today? It's kind of tough when it obviously got out of hand pretty quickly.
Yeah. So I'll agree with what Anthony was saying about, and you as well, about sort of the lack of efficiency on offense, and especially in the red zone as it got tighter a little bit. But that's sort of no matter who the players are on the other side of the ball, that's sort of what the cover 2 defense does and is. It's kind of like a snake, and it'll get a little bit tighter in the red zone. So even against a bad team, you can hide some of those deficiencies in that cover 2. That's what it's always been known for. So there's probably some of that. Weather played an impact into this. But at the same time, I know fans are frustrated from going down and getting 3 points instead of 6, and especially it gives flashbacks to that KC game, with especially the KC coming up here. But points are points, and they were up big at half. They led the game with, what did we end up, 5, 6, 7, 8-1 in toxic differential. So when you're not efficient, you can still blow a team out by turning the ball over, having big chunk plays that still get you into scoring range, and continuing to score on every single drive. So it's a weird blowout, because in the beginning of the game, it felt like it should be, like you said, or going into half at 30-0. And instead they had to put up some more in the second half to really put the game away. But it's a blowout shutout. I think it's going to be hard to really find anything to pick on this week.
Yeah, before we start diving into the individual breakdowns, it's just important for fans to step back and realize that, yeah, there were a couple of the conversions that could have gone, but this was as dominating of a victory as I can
Third
possibly
downs could have been
remember.
better.
Yeah, you know, a couple, again, the inefficiency there, this is where we ended up with field goals instead of touchdowns. But running 71 plays to 42, 450 yards to 109, 6.3 yards per play in an NFL game is ridiculous.
Is that good? I was
going to say, 2.6. And honestly,
well, they get in the run, what were they, like 5.5, 5.6 per run?
It was terrible. They ended up at 2.7. We ended up at 5 because of the kneel downs. The 3 kneel downs at the end, that would have actually been like 5.6 from what was there. And honestly, if you take away the couple of yards, they got 27 of those yards there in the final drive, 58 of them in those last 2 giveaway drives. So before that, there were points in the game. Appreciate you, Nick B. This is awesome.
I'm glad he's able to join us, man. Welcome.
That's fantastic. And it's just, important to keep in mind when we're looking at things like that. This was a dominant victory that honestly could have been much worse from where it was. But why don't we go ahead and dive right in? Aaron, lead us off with our main man.
Yeah, so game started out a little shaky for Josh with the wet balls, that first interception. I can't wait for Eric to take a look at that. I'm sure he's already got something out on TikTok or somewhere breaking that play down. But I want to see what happened there. And then the ball came out of his hands a little funny. I felt that vibe on Twitter of people getting a little antsy. Can Josh do this? And then from there, I think you tweeted it out that he needed to remember that this was just sort of pitch and catch still at the end of the day. Get some reps on the sideline. This is, even in the weather, you just got to get the ball to your guys. And from there, he was much more efficient, calmed down into the game. I think some of the lack of efficiency we saw was they really took Beasley out of this game with that cover 2 zone. And there was kind of brackets on Beasley and really keeping everything a defender between Josh Allen and Cole Beasley throughout this game. And that's going to take away some of Josh's efficiency of like long surgical drives, and especially where that red zone gets tighter. Some of those spots in the middle of that cover 2, I think are still hard to pick apart for any quarterback in the league. Many quarterbacks have gone up against cover 2s and struggled in that way. So not as efficient of a day as we want to see from Allen, but we saw a little bit on the ground. Weaponized Josh Allen is a thing I've always been for. You're not going to get me mad about Josh Allen design runs when you get that sexy sneak that he takes outside and picks up 15,
Delicious.
16 yards.
Seeing that their D-line was all scrunched in.
This is the weapon that he is, and he can make some plays with his legs. So I don't think there's any argument in this game for the regression crowd. I think maybe we thought that was going to be the case early in the game, but I don't see that argument in this game anywhere. It wasn't his best game, but with these weather conditions, that's what you need, is for Josh to come down. You want to see a little more of the efficiency in the red zone, but I think when we see the tape, we'll see a number of missing execution things about those red zone trips from everybody on that offense. I think we'll see a defense that's hard to score on in the red zone, that style of defense.
Yeah, for Josh, if you take away those first two passes, he was obviously squeezing the ball a little hard.
Yeah,
sailed on him.
He's got huge hands. How could you not?
It's a little odd, to got to take it under control. The rest of the game, he went 20 of 27 for 248 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 75% completion percentage. So literally, once he went to the sideline and kind of got it under control, it was runaway from that standpoint. So any other thoughts on Allen, Anthony?
No, I like the way he played. That's it. No, yeah, I think just I don't want to give him too much of a pass. The weather really did not work well in the favor of either offense today, and I thought it legitimately caused game plan changes and or adjustments during the game, mid-game, and everything. But again, Allen, even with the struggles in the beginning, he finished 20 to 29, and I don't think it's too crazy. His, again, not as efficient as we'd like to, but there was a lot of weather concerns. And also credit.
It's more efficiency in the red zone, right? Like, that's where we're complaining about here.
Yes,
in this game.
1,000%. But also with that, I thought Houston, for as bad as they've looked at times, I guess, on the score sheet, they played really hard today. And I thought they turned up a lot of intensity in the red zone. So give them some credit, too, for executing and maybe doing some things in tandem with whatever worked against Josh. But, all good with that.
All right, dive right into the running backs today, which obviously ended up carrying the rest of the day. The team, 40 carries for 199 yards. 3 of those were kneel downs from Mitch Trubisky. So prior to that, 37 carries for 205 yards. And having that kind of performance to be able to have, a ridiculous clip, going at that pace is going to be able to be something that we'd love to be able to lean on later on in the season. I don't know that we're going to get 5.6 yards a carry on a consistent basis, but what were your first thoughts on the running backs today?
I like the way both of them played. When you look at the total yards and the yards per
probably
carry,
our best tandem game between the two.
1,000%. And I thought it was interesting, to notice the rotation in a couple of ways. Greg, you and I were talking about it with Rich before a game in terms of some fantasy relation, but it looks like Zach Moss maybe is kind of the RB1 in this backfield. I also thought it was really interesting to see when the backups came in and it was kind of like blowout time. Singletary got every single touch, and they were like, no, we're keeping Zach Moss off the field kind of type of thing. But again, they're going to rotate.
I was a little curious. I couldn't tell if that was his turn to go or if it literally was starter backup. Moss was in the previous drive, so I have that in the back of my head too, hey, because I was wondering, is this 4-minute drill where you're going to bring him in to be the guy that's Moss's time, or was it just rotation time? I'm curious where that would have netted up.
I saw Singletary come out as the first thing I noticed, and then I noticed it was Trubisky, and I was like, same thoughts. But I mean, a really strong day. We had 40 attempts, 199 rushing yards as a team. Singletary went 14 for 79, 5.6 yards a clip. Zach Moss went 14 of 61 with the touchdown. Josh Allen, not a running back, but 6 carries for 41 yards. I just thought what was nice to see was just the execution and that we could do it. This is a pass-first team. This is a Josh Allen-led, wide receiver-centric offense, but it's nice to see that, okay, we have a terrible weather game. We need to run it a little bit more. Can we run it a little bit more? And again, granted, Houston is maybe not the best defense and not the best front, so on and so forth. At the end of the day, the Bills were able to tweak some things, lean on an aspect of their offense in the running game, and no pun intended, it carried them a little bit in this game and got them through. And I thought a lot of it was due to Moss and Singletary. You know, the blocking did decent enough up front at times, but Moss and Singletary made a lot of guys miss. Moss had a lot of broken tackles and strong runs. I thought it was a very, very, very strong performance from both running backs today.
Aaron, did you think the naked bootleg touchdown for Mitch Trubisky was disrespectful?
No, not at all. That's what I want to see. I wanted to see Mitch Trubisky get in a little bit earlier. I will say, if there was a Uncle Jumbo's responsible play of the game, I would have yelled a little bit at McDermott for not getting Trubisky in a little bit earlier. I think you were playing with fire towards the end of that game. But maybe to add here on to the running back play, I think this is what we wanted to see out of this unit all offseason. Every content creator that I listened to was saying not more carries necessarily, more efficient. And on a day like today, you're going to get more carries.
Sure.
And against the team like this, I think some of the conversations we'll have here later, it's hard to judge your team against the Texans, right? Like, I don't think that any of this is who this team is against better opponents necessarily, but still against opponents like this, when you have a lead like that and weather conditions like this, you have to lean on that ground game and really establish it. And that's how you dominate a team like this. So kudos to them for being able to not just play to the competition, but play above it and dominate it when it's not the strength of your team.
No, I agree. And again, today, you know, I like the 60-40, the 65-35 lean. That's not what you're going to do when you're a 17-point favorite in a rainy day. It made sense that it was 40 runs to 30 passes today. But if you're going to do that, you're going to pass it at a high efficiency clip. 8.6 yards per attempt is about as good as you can ask for. That's exactly how you want to be able to do this. So it's fantastic there. Really appreciate you guys. Eric, very generous. You guys are being awesome tonight. We really, the contributions make a big difference for us. We really
absolutely. Thank you.
As we go into the receiving core, I think you couldn't really ask for a lot more out of a game like this today. And having, you know, a wet ball is tough. You did see a couple fumbles here. I don't love seeing those. We were pretty lucky from that standpoint. We fell back on top of an awful lot of those fumbles that we saw. But being able to go, you know, that route to be able to get it done. Many of us predicted a big game from Stephon Diggs. You saw him out there in that alpha role again. You saw 10 targets, 7 catches for 114 yards. But still, that didn't necessarily come at the cost of the other guys. You still had a really nice game from Emmanuel Sanders, 5 for 74. And I still believe that we would have seen a much bigger Cole Beasley game today in better weather. If it was a normal weather game, we don't see 40 rushing attempts, and an awful lot of those. Cole Beasley is kind of our third down running back. Like, he is that quick out route, that adjustment there to be able to do. So I was really pleased with that end of it, that in limited outings it was there. But I won't step on this element of it. The sign behind you says it all. Aaron, another monster game from Dawson Knox. A touchdown in his third straight game, 2 touchdowns today, 5 catches for 37 yards. Go ahead, let the people know why they need to maybe send their own apology.
We live in this society where everybody wants everything immediately.
Society.
It's a societal problem here. I'm going to tell you, we want everything immediately. We want success immediately. We've seen it happen other places, and even though it's an aberration or some type of anomaly in those other places, we want that. We want our developmental prospect, who was more behind the curve than Josh Allen was when he got here at his position, to just automatically be.
He was made to play in the rain.
Yeah. To play, we wanted to play at the levels of Travis Kelce and stuff like that. And that this offense probably will never have a Travis Kelce type of guy too. So we set expectations, in my opinion, that are totally unreasonable for these guys. And then when they don't meet these expectations, we're all frustrated and want to move on from them. And sometimes you do have to just trust the process. We knew the Bills were high on this guy. We knew they wanted to give him the opportunities. Yes, they were looking this offseason to upgrade from this position. I'm really glad they didn't. I feel like fans would be frustrated right now if Zach Ertz was the tight end of this group and not making big plays. And you don't see Zach Ertz take that touchdown 25 yards, run after the catch, breaking tackles, and get that type of touchdown. Knox is an explosive guy, and I think he's put enough on tape already this season that meets what Brandon Beane was saying, which is we want a tight end that makes defenses think about the tight end position and that you have to cover it. Now they're going into Kansas City, which is the game specifically I think he was referencing, and Dawson Knox is a legitimate weapon so far on this offense, maybe the third, fourth weapon on this offense, but he's a weapon now that you have to account for if you're going to bracket Diggs and try to take him out of the game and then try to take Cole Beasley out of the game. You can't let Dawson Knox, especially in the red zone, maybe the most efficient of their targets right now in the red zone. So I think people need to put in their apology notes to Dawson Knox. I think this is about who he is. I think his ceiling is a guy like this that can be an efficient role. He's never going to be a 9 target tight end here. But 4 to 5 targets a game with what he end up with 30 something yards, 40 yards.
Today 37, but he had 8 targets today. 8 targets is honestly might be a
That's
career
probably
high. That might be a career high. It's a high for the
max
season.
for him.
He had 6, 2, and 6 coming into this game. 8 for today.
Beasley's going to eat most of those.
Correct.
Right, on most days. So I see him as a 5 to 6 max target guy, but this is okay. That's where he is, and that's who he is. So I think apology forms need to come out for Dawson Knox. I'll end my rant there.
I'll start. I was as vocal of an anti-Knox guy as anybody in the Bills content community this summer, and I was very clear the whole time. It wasn't that I was certain he couldn't do it. I wasn't certain that he was terrible. I wasn't telling people that he wasn't going to ever produce. It was that I hadn't seen it, and I'm tired of just hoping that he was going to, and I constantly leaned on the hope is not a plan. I wanted there to be a backup plan there. I thought it was risky going into here. I'm very, very happy to be wrong. Aaron, our friend Joe Marino was very vocal about, hey, this might be him taking advantage of all of those physical gifts into this third year. We need to be patient. We need to be able to do that. And you guys were right in that. I'm really glad the team believed in that they saw his development, and that I was impatient in wanting to move on and wanting that safety net or that backup plan from someone who was there. And certainly it's always fun to be wrong about something that benefits your team.
Every time.
Very true.
Anthony, anything else before we dive into the offensive line?
I think this day maybe continues the narrative that he only catches the hard passes because it was raining a lot and it was hard to catch the ball. So he caught everything because it was hard to make those catches.
Even the easy ones are hard. Yeah, I get it.
But no, it was nice to see. Like he, again, just the touchdown was beautiful. First from Josh to go through multiple reads and progressions and then find Knox for him to take advantage. And it's nice to see him finally putting everything together. And again, I think we mentioned it last week as well. Tight end isn't a position that the Bills need to rely on, but if we get production from that position and can take advantage of the matchup differentials between Dawson Knox and whoever's covering him, it becomes so much more difficult to defend this offense given the complementary pieces they have at wide receiver and how good Josh is at distributing the ball. So really
one more point on wide receiver room. I don't think we're making a big enough deal about how John Brown left. And we were all worried about that because we had a potent offense, and he was a big time receiver the year before for Josh Allen, and the upgrade of Manny Sands. And I think you saw it without Cole Beasley being a big part of this game, and Diggs got his targets and stuff like that. But really, Emmanuel Sanders kept this offense moving on a lot of those drives and being that chain mover for this team. He's become a consistent guy for Allen. I think it's actually quite a good upgrade from John Brown in this offense. I don't think that's getting talked about enough because when you lose a guy like that, when you're a contender, most teams don't replace it with a better option. You might get your floor back, but you usually don't get better. So kudos to Brandon Beane and company.
Especially a 34-year-old guy that was very easy to question coming off his last 3 years.
And Field Yates had a cool little tidbit on the fantasy show this morning. Emmanuel Sanders, prior to this game, had the fastest tracked speed of any Bills player this year, which is, again, really cool to see for a middle-aged receiver who
not only Bills. I saw another cool one like that that I think Maddie Gabriel put out during the week. The Emmanuel Sanders had the third highest average speed in the entire NFL at the point of catch of all his catches this season. So not only is he not losing a step, he's moving the third fastest of any wide receiver in the NFL at the point of making his catches.
We're getting better with age, so why not?
like a fine wine.
That's what I'm saying. Why not Manny?
So what one last piece before we go out, I did like our guys over at hashtag were saying that every Knox catch needs to have the da-na-na. He does
send out alerts.
Only make the highlight catches. Aaron, how about the maybe a little anxiety up front with what we saw? Not sure what the shuffling was going to be. Obviously, from today's results, I think it was smart of the team to play the conservative route for anybody who we weren't sure on their health. So I liked it that they sat out Feliciano, but we did not expect the shift of Darrell Williams into guard and Spencer Brown at tackle. Obviously, we need to see the film. Offensive line is the toughest one to grade when you're watching the ball and watching the broadcast view.
Right.
Just your snap initial thoughts. What did you see so far?
Yeah, this is a super hard one for me too. So I was thinking that going into this game when we started to see right before kickoff that they were going to make this move, because I've been anti this move. And if this is a move that works out, I'll happily take my loss on this, just like you just did. And that if it's a move that benefits the Bills, I'm happy to be wrong about it. I don't know that we're going to get an answer from this game. I just don't. I think you'd like to see if some of these younger players get reps and snaps and sort of see where they hang. But I don't know that the Houston Texans are the organization to.
I don't know that Charles
measure.
who is the test that's going to tell us is he ready to be a starting right tackle.
But from what we saw of the players, unfortunately, don't get an option to play against better talent. They get the snaps that they're given. And from what we saw, at least from the game, I didn't see any issues. I liked some of what I saw out of Spencer Brown. That play with Moss where he came in and pushed him an extra 2 to 3 yards, like that type of aggression where everybody else is standing around. Like we see that on tape with this guy, that he's playing all the way through every play. That's nice to see. You didn't see a ton of pressure on Josh Allen. When the pressure I did see early in the game was coming from Deion Dawkins and Whitney playing on Dawkins there. So I didn't see a ton of.
Yeah, Whitney Merciless, the only sack today was against Dawkins.
Yeah, and you saw a couple pressures there. So I think that with those changes, and again, we had this conversation off air about leaks in one Bills drive. Nobody saw this coming until game day.
Literally warm-ups on the field. Game
absolutely. It wasn't even something really being talked about, except for online. People have been talking about it for a long time, but nobody saw this coming for this offensive line. So pretty big shakeup, really. And this is a guy the Bills have been talking about a lot, and Cody Ford this offseason, and that he needed to take this step forward. So I think it's a big indictment of what they've seen of his play so far, and that might be the chance that he had. I don't know if you go back to him, if the tape's good enough here. I don't want to see them switching back and forth this line too much here as the year goes on. I do hope they find something that they think works. And if it's Darrell Williams kicking in and Spencer Brown starting at least a year before you and I thought he would, Greg, then that's the path I want to see going forward, and stick with it. But don't shuffle this in and out every single week and make it a rotation, a carousel of the offensive line. But I think this is probably going to be the thing. Once we get all 22 and really start talking about this game, this is the piece I think most fans want to see what everyone saw and what's going to happen going forward.
So I know I struggled, and we were talking about it in the window of time from the announcement of the beat reporter saying, hey, first team offensive line looks like X. And then Eric and I were in the chat going back and forth, and it's hard to thread the needle of, on one side, I want to see the best five. I don't want to see them just settle for the sake of continuity and gelling. No, get the best five guys out there. However, I'd kind of like to give them enough time and to settle on five to let them go with it. And that's very hypocritical to say I want both things, to be able to balance it out. And I'm torn here. So, Anthony,
but you're an American. You can have all the things you want.
I can want all the things that I want with absolutely no logic involved. You can't make me. So, Anthony, as you look at this, and assuming there's one more factor in play here, John Feliciano probably was the best guard the last 2 weeks after week one. In his week 2 and week 3, if he's back next week, what do you do to now? Do you just slot him back in at left guard and then keep Ford and Bacher on the bench after what you saw, or do you think we see Williams back at right tackle and Brown back on the bench?
This is such a difficult question.
And it will be an awesome topic for the film room and for our shows Wednesday and Thursday after we can see more of the play. So obviously we each have the right to change our minds here once we see a little bit more, but your snap thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm just going to say a bunch of stuff and then backtrack as soon as I watch the All-22 anyway. That's what I'm going to do. But no, coming into this game, I mentioned it on Disguise coverage last week, after the Washington game, Cody Ford was second amongst all offensive linemen in total pressures allowed with 17. Granted, 12 of those came against Washington, so a huge piece from that. And I like the way he played, honestly, in the first 2 games. And, he was one of the guys who didn't get destroyed consistently against Pittsburgh. Darrell Williams today, again, I want to see the All-22. He had several plays that he just got blown up inside, whether he was beaten on the rip or the swim almost right off the snap. He had several bad snaps in pass protection. He had that holding call on the Singletary run, which was holding. I don't want to say it was ticky-tack, but it was.
That was a soft call.
Yeah, I mean, he did get a good amount of the jersey, but I thought.
But he was on the inside. He wasn't like holding the pad.
Correct. Usually it's let go if it's inside on the shoulder pads and inside of the shoulder. So I thought that was a little, tough to call him on that. But he did have some very rough pass protection snaps. But I think he's better suited for that right tackle spot. I really want to see the All-22. Once Feliciano comes back, if I could really have my way, I would put Ford back at right guard and then slide Darrell Williams back to right tackle. And that's not anything against Spencer Brown. I didn't notice any large flashes from him that he had any mistakes. I thought he looked strong in the run game. Greg, like you mentioned,
the finishing ones were fun.
Yes, 1,000%. He had a nice finish on his man rushed and like slipped, and Spencer Brown was just like, okay, and then just drove him right into the dirt, nice and physical.
I think he smoked Zach Moss into 3 extra yards at one point just by hitting him and pushing him forward.
At first, I was yelling at the TV because I thought Moss had broken the tackle already, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And then I was like, "Oh, he was going to go down anyway, so that's fine, good play."
Right.
But you know, I think Spencer Brown is. I still think he needs more seasoning, but I think he's ahead of where I thought he would be at this point in his career, which is very promising. But he's not to the point where I want to start him against presumably a healthier Kansas City defensive line with a returning Chris Jones, a returning Frank Clark next week. I would rather go with something that's a little more tried and true and putting Ford back at right guard and then Darrell Williams at right tackle, especially considering
I don't want to see Chris Jones against Cody Ford.
I don't want to see that either, but also to your point, but like to that,
yeah.
I don't think Darrell Williams did a ton in pass protection at right guard today that maybe go like, oh, well, boom, he's the answer. I feel like it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of another at this point.
That's for sure my number one topic. More than seeing Spencer Brown at right tackle, I want to see how Williams did at guard when we can really see the film to go through and be like, okay, I feel confident he's a better tackle, but is it that he's just slightly better or that he's just not passable at guard? I don't know that we saw enough today. Malik Collins is a reasonable test.
Yeah.
Oh, fair.
I think it's mincing turds in a litter box, though, like across this interior offensive line, all the guards. This is Feliciano's
even
included.
Adding Williams as a fourth option amongst Feliciano, Botker, and Ford.
Correct.
I don't know that we have one above average guard out of the four.
And I feel comfortable against Chris Jones.
Yeah.
No. I mean, but are you really? I don't know if any, not even to knock them, like, is any team comfortable with their guard play against Chris Jones? Like,
I'm uncomfortable with it.
Oh yeah,
I'm not just like maybe we can. It's not.
We can't. It's not an ideal position either way you slice it.
Yeah.
So let's dive right into our friends over at West Herr. If you are looking for a vehicle in the Western New York area, the largest auto group in all of Western New York and all of New York State, the West Herr Automotive Group, they are there for all your automotive needs. I'll kick it off here with the one. I think it's fun that they scored so many times that there's a lot of really good options here. So I think the second drive in the second half, the 11-play, 84-yard drive, really started to get some rhythm going and started mixing in the run and the pass. That's the one that ended with the and I wanted just an excuse to talk about this, the awesome like RPO that Josh then kept and was going to start to run, and when the defender came at him, threw it over his head to Dawson Knox. That unless that initial rush defender makes it just an amazing individual performance, I don't know how you defend that play. Like, I don't know how you defend that play if Josh Allen runs it properly. So
you can't.
That was my nomination.
Leftern on Twitter gave me their lawyers okay to use that play being called Dawson's leak. It's funny. It's a good one. It's a good one.
So bad.
Maybe just for middle-aged men, but it's good.
My man Mike Thomas, one of my friends I told you about that went to their first game today. I'm glad that he and his wife actually suffered through the rain, but got to see a 40-0 blowout here. I know Joe Marino brought his wife to her first game as well. Right. So hope you guys still enjoyed it despite the weather. At least the game was great, but hope you enjoyed it, Mike.
Yeah, definitely. Much better to say. I've sat through games of that weather that were not good football games, and it's way better. So I'll take next while I'm just sitting here rambling. I'm going to go. So I agree with you, Greg, that's probably the best drive of this offense of the game. And I actually didn't love most of the drives. We go back to some of the inefficiency that we had talked about. Like, there were some good, decent drives that got you into scoring range, but you couldn't really capitalize on, especially in that first half. I'm going with actually a defensive drive.
Nice.
Josh Allen comes out, throws an interception early in this game, and it gives Houston great field position. And this is the kind of plays, this is the kind of drive that keeps a team that has no business being in a football game and gives them a little bit of an idea that they can hang and play in this game. And then your team comes out, either lets up a score, or lets up a bad play, or it gets in Josh's head, whatever it is. The Bills respond by going 4 and out. They'd go for it on fourth down, do not convert. It was a great tip pass by Jerry Hughes on a nice play on a fourth down. And I thought that really took a momentum swing for the Texans early, which is the last thing you want against a team like this, is an early momentum swing to give them any type of confidence. And it took that completely away. And then we really saw this team dominate them for the remainder of that game. And so that's my drive of the game, just because it could have been go the other way from a play like that. And they took that momentum right away from them.
Giving a 17-point underdog the ball at the 13-yard line going in is an easy way to go into an ugly, oh my gosh, why are we letting this team hang with us kind of game?
Yes.
So I think it's a great call. Anthony, what did you have as the drive of the game?
I'm laughing over here because my first one was the one that Greg went with, and then my backup was the one that Aaron went with.
Welcome in the new guy to the show. You got to win,
right?
Yeah, you got to go third. So that's what happens now.
But yeah, I don't want to, rehash what you guys said. You guys were spot on with everything for all the reasons you mentioned. So I'm just going to go with, why I'm here today. I'm going to go with the drive of the game was Jaquan Johnson intercepting Davis Mills and shutting the door,
the game away,
letting all the people know, putting the final nail in the coffin. I'll just go with that for good feeling's sake. But I think you guys were spot on with both of them. The momentum killer at the beginning, not allowing a young Houston team that was intense today and wanted to make some things happen, not allowing them to do anything. That the drive starts on the Bills 13 after the interception. They force them to go 4 and out and stop them on 4th. And then obviously that 11-play, 84-yard killer to finally kind of put the Bills up 26-0 and kind of set things in the clear were my two big ones.
Yep.
So we'll pivot right back to you since we stole your thunder for the drive of the game. Today was a game where some people asked, is this last week there were some pressures that some of the numbers on, the PFF, advanced stats look more favorable. We only really had the 1 sack on Taylor Heineke. A little bit more today, ended up going with 2 sacks, but had a lot of tackles for loss, a lot of really strong performance coming up that way, a couple more hits. What were your initial thoughts on the defensive line?
Oh, strong game. Just from the perspective of not giving an inch and allowing anything, whether it was in the run game, whether it was, I know maybe didn't show up to your point on the sack stat sheet, but they were just kind of in Mills' face all day, causing problems, getting hands up at the line of scrimmage, tipping passes, making life very difficult for a rookie QB like they should. I thought Ed Oliver was the biggest standout. He had so many flashes up front, just quick, almost immediate penetration off the line, whether it was a gap scheme where he just straight beat his man or zone, and him just taking that first step, flashing inside, ripping through and blowing up the play in the backfield. I thought today was also another really strong performance from Star Lotulelei. This was another game where we are continuing to see pass rush production from Star Lotulelei. He drew a holding call on a pass play.
Which he's drinking whatever Manny Sands is drinking.
Had a fantastic, legitimate sack on a beat. He beat his man with an explosive play. It was not a cleanup sack. Star just straight up beating his dude and sacking the quarterback. We haven't seen a lot of that.
No, it was nice. And on that sack, they played a little game, and the defensive end started to loop back inside. And all it took was that split second of hesitation between the tackle and the guard, and Star shot the gap and brought down Mills. I think we're at the point now where
apology letters for Star.
1,000%. I think fans finally realize the production and the value that Star offers this defense from a run standpoint and a run fit standpoint. But if we get anything out of him in pass rush, it's a tremendous boon for this defensive line. So Ed was a huge standout. Star was a huge standout. I thought Harrison Phillips, seeing him be active and potentially healing even further from that initial injury in the preseason, he had a couple good flashes today, especially from the interior. And then shout out to Boogie Basham getting his first sack today.
Career sack,
nice
and a tackle
play
for loss.
Yep, and a tackle for loss. I thought the sack was really nice. He started to beat his man outside, then he went back in to read Mills' steps and then cut right back, got flat, brought Mills down. Really good sack and play from him, which is nice to see in his first game. And then we saw a couple flashes here and there from, Rousseau and AJ Epinesa, but I think this is the type of game again where someone else is flashing on the defensive line. Someone else is showing up. It's almost 2 to 3 different people every single week. And the guys who aren't flashing as much are still having good plays. The defensive line continues to be strong in both rotation and efficiency and production. So yeah, really good day from the defensive line.
And there was actually a third sack that isn't credited in the box score, the one where Mills went back and he had the fumble and fell on the ball, and then Milano and Rousseau got him there. That'll be credited during the week here. It's listed as 3 team sacks, but only 2 Star and Boogie's in the individual performance. But I thought Ed Oliver had his best game so far. Really he was just consistently disruptive, getting in there. Anybody else stand out to you, Aaron?
Nah, you guys hit everything I wanted to say about the defensive line, and I like what we're seeing right now.
Diving into the linebackers, obviously this is good and bad. The worst outcome for the game today is that we don't know the severity of Matt Milano's hamstring injury.
Right.
So of
Thoughts
anything,
and
when you
prayers.
have a blowout win like this, you want to walk away healthy. And I don't know that there was that one moment with the offensive line, but both Dawkins and Butker came back in. So finding out the severity of Matt Milano's hamstring injury matters a lot. It's not going to be tested. AJ Klein can play against Houston Texans. They don't have the weapons in the slot and in the tight end position and running backs out of the backfield to really make you pay for having an AJ Klein on the field. So you're not going to feel it in a game like today. But long term, we need Matt Milano. Matt Milano is arguably playing the best football of anybody on this fantastic defense, and that's really saying something. That aside, that is a huge caveat for this week. I really want to see him against the Chiefs this coming Sunday night. Hamstring injuries are historically tricky. I will say that my, completely uninformed random speculation is I'll be surprised if we see Matt Milano back next week. So we'll see where that goes during the week. For what we did see on the field, I thought all the backups did well. It's a little bit easier when you know the other team's just trying to scrap and get back in the game. But we saw flashes from Medikevich. We saw flashes from Klein. We saw a moment from Tyler Dodson. I thought Tremaine Edmonds looked great.
Yeah,
Tremaine Edmonds' game was in there breaking the ball up. Finally, he had a couple huge hits for like what will be graded as run stuffs and had an interception. That's what people were asking for. We keep telling people that, hey, he's better than you guys think. He's very steady. He's contributing. And when they say, yeah, but I want big plays, we always go, well, yeah, I kind of would want those too. I wish we had more big plays too. Aaron is willing to donate his hamstring.
Yeah, it's not well used, but he can have it.
Yeah, actually, you're pretty limber lately, though. You've been doing a lot of
I
stretching
got a little
and
yoga. He can have the yoga, Hammy.
All right.
So we'll go to you first, Aaron. What were your thoughts on the linebacker play, and do you echo my praise for Tremaine Edmonds today?
Yeah, I thought Tremaine had one of his better games. And what flashed to me wasn't the flash play is great and the interception. That stuff doesn't matter to me in terms of determining who a player is. Like, we want more of that stuff, but what I need to see is on the play in and play out. He's not going to get tons of interceptions in any given season. What I want to see is the sideline to the sideline, the shooting the right gap, the playing the linebacker the way he's supposed to. There's been a lot put on his plate at a young age. Everyone talks about how young this guy is, and he's been running the defense since he got here, and it was a position change for him. This is another one of these guys that it's a developmental process, and he was probably behind the eight ball starting into this league and getting going. You're just seeing that sort of start to pay off here. But what I saw from Tremaine specifically was on that sideline to sideline plays. You'll see a number of plays this week where he just had great footing, great spatial awareness, got back when he needed to, and then attacked the ball runner. And that's what I need to see from him. Is he's got that freak athleticism. I need to see it be a problem and be able to contain runners all over the field. And so I think that was the biggest thing I saw out of him today. And to the Milano thing, I want to see what happens with this, but I very much think in a game like this, even if he came off and just said, hey, my hamstring's tight, I think they were yanking him today.
There's no reason to put him back in the game.
You do not play around with that in a game like this when you know you're going to blow a team out. So that's one that we'll see. I'm not going to assume we're not going to see him next week. I'm going to hope and pray for the best. I'm going to meditate on it. I'll do yoga and think about it and put positive vibes out there, Gregory. Put some positive thoughts that we're going to see Matt Milano next week.
Just like you having to bring me back from the edge of not cooking a steak this game day eve and being able to go there, you need to reel me back in.
Let's get our Zen right, guys. Come on, put good vibes out.
Get things balanced. So any other thoughts on the linebacker play, Anthony?
No, just hit on a few more of the positives. I thought, Klein, nice play on the tip ball that led to the Micah Hyde interception. Good for him. But second that notion completely that this is a game that Klein could succeed. I don't see that happening against the Kansas City Chiefs. Tremaine Edmonds, the biggest thing for me in going through the All-22 so far this year is he continues to struggle in the angles and path that he takes to the football, and something that Eric Turner has mentioned multiple times. Edmonds is seen as, being very athletic and fast and quick and strong and all these things. But because of how big he is and because of his length, both in his legs and his upper body, his stop, start, and change of direction is not tremendous. And so that's why sometimes he gets beat on those cutbacks, or when he over pursues, he can't adjust as much. Today was a day where whether it was sideline to sideline, coming forward, making a tackle deeper. He took almost every angle possible. When he got his guy and when he got his hands on anyone, he brought them down to the ground. Greg, I loved your point on like the impact of a lot of the hits that he had. You heard the pops, you heard the ooze from the sideline. Like he had a lot of forceful, physical plays today in addition to that interception. And I think he's had a better year than people have wanted to give him credit for. Today was a nice day to finally see him show up on the big play and the stat sheet in big ways so that people could recognize it. And yeah, Milano, could the injury be any less ill-timed, right before Kansas City? And echo Aaron's thought completely. My only hope is he was just like, my leg feels a little weird. They're like, just sit down. Just go to the
relax it. Go stretch.
Go ahead.
Yep.
Get out of the ring. We'll get you an umbrella. That's fine.
Just go sit down. Yeah, we're gonna go put you in the jacuzzi, get you a massage. You'll be okay. Like that's really what I'm hoping for because he's for me.
And I don't want to hear the injury prone thing. That's I want to see him play in this next game, but I don't want to have to deal with the conversations of this guy being injury prone. He's just too good of a player and means too much.
And and I don't even think it's a question, Greg, you mentioned it. I think it's hands down. He's been the best player on this defense so far to start this year. And I think in a lot of ways, he's the straw that stirs the drink and we need him going forward, especially against Kansas City. So
looking like Brandon Beane's best deal ever. If he keeps on this pace. Pretty nice deal. Looks better every day.
Very true.
I'll dig into these DBs here. So we were talking about the defensive line, and I agree with everything you said, Anthony, about the defensive line and looking good, more so at the point of attack in the run game. I think a lot of the pressures and sacks came from coverage in this game, and I think we'll see that a little bit when we get the All-22. I was very happy. Some of this is, again, the talent, right? Milano massaging Houston. Oh, no. On the nose. So I think a little bit of this again is we knew they were going to attack with Brandon Cooks if they were going to be able to get anything going in the air. That was analytically proven. We saw it on tape that's where they were going with the ball. So having a Trey White and having the ability to, if you've got a very one-dimensional quarterback, to be able to take that away is easier. So we have to kind of grade this game on a curve with these defensive backs. But I think not having Jaquan Johnson and Jordan Poyer and that communication that we talk about so often in these zone coverages of being so key to some of these coverages. I won't lie that I had some nerves that, hey, a blown communication or something like that, even though you're superior opponent or you're superior to your opponent and you have better talent, a blown communication is the type of thing that can let a team like this hang around in the game and lead to some more explosive plays that maybe they wouldn't otherwise get. And so to see that not be a problem with two starters coming out and two long-term starters coming out and slot, very hard, a lot of communication in the slot position. And obviously Jordan Poyer does a lot of that stuff. And Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer talk about it all the time where they don't have to talk to each other anymore. So you added all these wrinkles into this defense. I think the defense responded well. I'm a big Taron Johnson fan, and I want to see him on this team again next year, but I think you get a little more confidence that Cam Lewis can come into an NFL game and play if needed. Again, I think the competition a little bit, we have to grade on a curve. I think people will freak out that we'll never be able to get him back on the practice squad now. I don't know that he played that well, that he's the hottest commodity in the NFL now, but good to see him get out there and get some reps. Not a great look for my guy, Saran Neal, who didn't get those slot cornerback reps. They really seem to like Cam Lewis in that backup role. So it's nice to see these guys, Jaquan Johnson, get a full game of tape. Again, we're not going to get all of it till we get the All-22. I will say, sneaky, when the power went out at that game and they switched to the one sort of side up angle, and you could even see half the defense. Like you could see a little bit deeper than you normally could on pass plays and run plays. That was interesting to me. I think the NFL should get a little bit more of that because you did see a little bit more in the coverage with that particular angle. So I really want to see what Jaquan Johnson did. He had a nice play breaking up a deep ball. Love to see that out of him. That was something even you, Anthony, the biggest of Jaquan Johnson stands, wanted to see him playing that deep third of the field in some of the zone coverage. So happy with this unit. Again, Levi Wallace, this would have been another game to attack whoever Levi Wallace was guarding. If he's this guy that you can pick on, no matter who the quarterback and other team is, because you have to stay away from Trey White, was not able to be picked on again in this game. So I think I have no major complaints against this defensive backs, and really good to see some of these young guys, but I can't wait to get back healthy for Kansas City and get this unit that we suspect is going to be out there back in the fold.
The Anthony Rapello, really appreciate you, man. Yeah, the 18 carries for 48 yards, 2.7 yards a carry. Hard to complain. The Bills are right at the top of the list in run defense for the NFL this year. Anthony, you can feel free to speak about people other than Jaquan Johnson if you like, but feel free to
have your moment
where you like.
Actually, I wanted to lead. Aaron, you mentioned the Brandon Cooks piece. He came into this game tied for third in the NFL in catches with 23, tied for third in the NFL with 322 receiving yards. He finished this game 5 catches, 47 yards on 7 targets.
Deep into the fourth quarter, he had 1 catch for 3 yards.
That was the big caveat. A lot of that came in garbage time when it was kind of
on
like
one
whatever.
play. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
1,000%. So that was great. I'll lead with Jaquan Johnson. It's the reason I'm wearing this Ed Reed Miami Hurricanes jersey today, in honor of Jaquan, who went to the U. But, I thought he had a good game. I'll wait for the all-22. But I really want to drill home what I thought was more interesting. We've talked about it together. Aaron, you and I talked about it on Twitter today. I know what he can do around the line of scrimmage. I anticipated seeing him more around the line of scrimmage because of that. And instead, they almost kind of flipped it on its head. We saw Micah Hyde more around the line, blitzing off the edge, coming down in the slot. We saw Jaquan Johnson in the deep third. We saw them running a little more too high with Jaquan and Micah Hyde being deep. Even when Hamlin came in later in the game, that Jaquan Johnson interception, they dropped into cover 3. Hamlin was the safety that came up in that buzz technique around the flat and the hooks. Jaquan was dropping deep. So I thought that was very interesting to see him. Again, it's not just because I like him as a player. The fact that he was able to show that functionality in the deep third.
First time we've seen that usage from him.
1,000%. That wasn't even a ton of usage like we saw out of him at Miami. He was more box-based and around the marker type of safety. So really encouraging for him. Aaron, I thought you were spot on with everything too. Like as great as the secondary played and the defense as a whole, great on a curve a little bit for that Houston offense and that passing attack. But strong game from Jaquan Johnson. Again, strong game from Cam Lewis. Looked really sound in coverage when he had that nice punch out on the play where Tremaine Edmonds wrapped up Akins and then Cam Lewis came and punched it out. So it's nice to see that we were able to show a little bit of functional depth because I thought it was a worry. I know all of us wanted a corner reinforcement in one of the first 3 rounds of the draft. We did not get that. And we liked the starters, but after, Tre'Davious White and Levi Dane and Taryn, and then Hyde
was particularly weak, right?
1,000%. So it was like, well, if Taron Johnson goes down, oh man, what do we do? If Micah or Poyer go down, oh goodness, what do we do? And I don't think we've answered all those questions to the point it's like, oh, we're good. We don't have to worry about it. But it's nice to see that we had very encouraging performances for those guys who stepped in. And to build on Aaron's last point there, I assumed the slot snaps would go to Saron Neal. I did not think it would go to Cam Lewis. So I think it's very interesting that he gets called up right from the practice squad and is just inserted into that spot, has a really strong game. I thought that was very telling and very interesting as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to lean into my comments along with our Uncle Jumbo's player spotlight. And it's because I think it's really hard to be able to explain just how good of a game Micah Hyde had, that when you lose, not that he's not communicating with Levi and Trey White out on the outside, because he is, but so much of the handoffs and communication for the pass coverage is with your linebackers and with your slot. So when he loses Jordan Poyer and Taron Johnson and Matt Milano and is able to keep everything moving on a string and being able to keep there, and again, of course, it's with the caveat that it's Davis Mills and that there's not a lot of weapons on the interior there. But your job is to take that lesser and inferior opponent and to clearly show that you're the dominant, better team. Lauren, thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
means
Lauren.
a lot. Yeah, thank you. It's something that I really think needs to be, called out. And obviously he had another interception, and that's great. But what really mattered was he was there coordinating with guys that he doesn't really play with all that often, and that we know how much, Anthony, the genesis of your show name, Disguise Coverage, is because of the continuity and everything that's there and all the things they can play around and do because they've all played together for 4 years plus. And that not having that today and not showing one little chink in the armor was really reassuring. So I don't know where you guys wanted to go in different directions to call out different things, but Aaron, we'll go to you next. Yep. What was your spotlight for today?
My spotlight was Stephon Diggs, back having a big game. One of the things I'd said on the preview show is I didn't want to see it get forced to Diggs in a game like this where you're going to beat your opponent and you just want to get somebody back or get somebody in a groove. It seemed to be a very natural part of the offense that and we went up against a team that really couldn't take him away, right? We've seen a lot of these teams try to do bracket coverage and really try to take Diggs and eliminate him, and that just wasn't going to be the case against the Texans. He did what a true alpha wide receiver one does against a team like this. So it's good to see him back and get a little bit of confidence before that KC game, because I know he's saying all the right things, and I do believe that the stats don't matter and that he's not this diva that they had in Minnesota, but as a competitor, the type of competitor that we've heard and know that he is, you know that he wants to be more a part of this and more involved in the success of this team. So I'm sure there was some frustration early in this year to not get going back to that level that he had with Josh a year ago. So to see him get something, really, I think maybe not the biggest part of the reason they won this game today, but in my mind, big for his confidence moving forward here this season.
Anthony, how about for you? What do you want to give some extra spotlight to?
It's tough. I think there were a lot of standout performance today on both sides of the ball, but I'm going to circle back to Jaquan and Cam Lewis just from, again, I know it's not, no, and it's not even just because of Jaquan. It's not just because of that. And I know we're grading on a curve, but we are, and thank you very much for the donations. This came through. Thank you so much, guys. I recognize the Texans are a bit deficient.
Sure.
I just thought it was great that we were able to put two very much unproven guys in and not really necessarily miss a beat, even if it was against lesser talent. They weren't liabilities. They weren't stressed. It could have been very easy for them to be like, oh, cool, like these guys are in here. Let's put them in a position where we can take advantage of them. We can stay away from Tre'Davious White. Hell, even if we want to, we can stay away from Levi Wallace. They didn't get victimized. They did not look like they didn't belong out there on the field. I recognize, again, that talent is not there for Houston, but you saw them communicating a lot. You saw a lot of talk from the secondary at all times. And, Aaron, you had that awesome point where Poyer and Hyde don't really have to say anything. They just know. They click. They're on the same page. We didn't have that with the group that was out there today, but they did so much talking and so much working together pre-snap that they were able to execute so well at a high level post-snap. And I wanted to bring them up because, not to take anything away from Jaquan or Cam Lewis, I think that speaks to the coaching that the Bills have on this team and the leadership that this defense has, that they were able to bring guys in who were prepared, who knew what to do, and were able to execute at the level they needed them to execute. I think when you've got guys, I don't care if it's against the worst team in the NFL, when you bring in backups and they're able to perform at a level that you need them to and a level that you expect them to, that's 1,000% pointing towards your coaching and your leadership both on and off the field. And so it's a larger picture thing for me, but really proud of their performance and what it speaks to for this team and coaching staff as a whole.
Well, it's perfect. It takes us right into our final couple elements here with special teams and coaching. So from a special team standpoint, Aaron, I said on the Wednesday night show that I thought this would be a 1 or 2 punt game for Matt Hawk, and it was. He punted one time. Exactly what you want to see. He had one perfectly reasonable, normal punt. Tyler Bass, again, made all 8 of his kicks today. I don't know that we expected it to be 4 field goals, but to make all 8 of your kicks in the rain, that's all you can ask for, is to have perfect setup. So I'm going to give some credit to Matt Hawk there. A lot of the challenges in weather issues for kicking are because of the snap and the hold. So good on Reed Ferguson, good on Matt Hawk, good on Tyler Bass. 4 for 4 in field goals, 4 for 4 in extra points. Really outstanding day. And, the return of Andre Roberts, he certainly wanted to push something there. I don't know that he had a single return come out past the 25-yard line.
One of them was like a 27, got to 27 or something, but it wasn't much,
All of them were right there in that range. Several of them came short, pretty short on a punt return, kept everything in check. Anthony, how did you think things went from a coverage standpoint and from the kicking game as well?
Really good coverage standpoint all the way around, punt and kick return coverage. We had a couple big sticks in the kick return coverage as well. Jaquan had one, and then I forget who had the second on Roberts around like midfield as he got to like the 19 or 20. So really good kick coverage, solid in the field goal aspect. And, I know we've been on Twitter and on this show maybe a little more critical of Isaiah McKenzie than some others were. Thought he made good decisions today, showed explosiveness when he got his hands on the ball. I think this could have been another game where you could see struggles in the return game, especially on punts because of the wind and because of the rain. So shout out to him for being secure in his decision-making and with the ball in his hands. And, special teams, much like the defense and the offense, I thought they were solid all the way around. This was a 3-phase solid performance that they really contributed and had no errors. So shout out to them.
Yeah, let's go right into the coaches here as we wrap up this, because I think off the field a little bit, you had a game here that could have been a trap game. And we heard right from the start of the week, Sean McDermott given the, if you take an opponent like this lightly, you get your ass kicked in the NFL. And I think that's a great message, and that resonated through the building. But then you have to balance the saying that to your players and then holding out Jordan Poyer and Taron Johnson being held out. And that, yes, you're saying these things that are right, but that can still feel like a trap game. And having this team ready, like you alluded to, Anthony, when we're talking about the DBs and your player spotlight, having some of these younger players, having those guys ready and getting them in the game plan, trusting in them. That's fantastic. I think the coaching staff did a great job in a week that could have easily been a trap game. Those are things because we've seen it in the NFL a number of times where teams play down to their opponent. And so we didn't see that. They were ready. They were coached. Everybody was well coached. Everyone came out and executed. Another piece of the coaching here I want to chat about real quick before I turn it over to any of your opinions is I thought Brian Dabel had a really nice game in that he pivoted probably from what they wanted to do to this Texans team. I think when you look at tape and you're putting your game plan together, you're like, we're going to pick this team apart for 500 passing yards and blow them up. The weather had an impact on that. The shift in the offensive line, I don't know how that impacted what they were trying to accomplish today, but to make that big shift on that side of the ball too, and still have good success with your offense and shift with that weather and have a very efficient run game out of it and calling a good run game and sticking to it at times. I thought it was a really nice day from Dabel and showing that type of, a lot of these guys come out and they just are so thick-headed and have such egos. I don't think Brian Dabel has this type of ego as a coordinator. We see Chicago complain about Matt Nagy and his ego and getting in the way of play calling. I was talking to my brother who they want Dabel, obviously. And I was like, well, you're not going to get that with Dabel. Like, he's going to build an offense to the success of his players and to game by game and what is working in the moment. And we saw that here today, that he pivoted with this weather and knew that to get Josh and the offense going, that they also had to establish a run game and keep the chains moving that way. So good all around. And probably the only thing that they're going to tell you that I'll also tell you is just that cleaning up that execution in the red zone. I think that'll be the thing they harp on themselves about here this week. When we hear from the coordinators and Sean McDermott is, hey, this was a great game. We dominated them, but we got to clean up that red zone stuff. So still something to work on, some meat left on the bone, but I thought pretty nice job all around. And real quick, I want both your guys' opinions on this. On fourth down, I have no problem with them running it down, taking a timeout. Those plays work. They've worked in the past. We've gotten teams to jump off. They've snapped it early and gotten good plays out of it. There's so much versatility in it. People get so mad at Twitter, but I think it's actually responsible Uncle Jumbo's decisions of the game almost every time we see it.
Yeah, I'll second that notion. I thought it was a play that was low risk, potentially high reward there, and I don't think it takes anything away at all. No, I'm right there with you on that. And I don't have too much to add for the coaching other than, I mentioned it in the lead in, and Aaron, you started to speak about it there. I loved the adjustment in the game plan, or whether that was the plan coming in, but I think it was more rain based, for them to go to the run a little bit more. I think, one of my biggest problems with the Steelers game was when we realized that their front was teeing off on the offensive line and Josh Allen a little bit, that we didn't mix in some kind of, whether it was a screen or more runs or draws or something to throw that defensive line off a little bit, to counter them a little bit. Instead, we seemed like we were just like, nope, we're just going to keep doing this, and it ended up not working. Granted, there are some variables in there that account for that, but I thought this game was the antithesis of that. We saw, the weather's terrible, the wind is bad, we have to adjust a little bit. It could have been easy to be like, no, we still think we can take advantage of them in the past, which I thought they would coming into this game. I was super surprised when looking at the numbers. The Texans led the NFL coming into this game in man coverage. They were in man coverage 61% of the time, with rushing their front four 90% of the time, which was first in the NFL. They've only blitzed on 6% of their snaps coming into this game, which was 31st in the NFL. And I was like, so you guys are just going to sit back, rush four with not a bad front four, but not really a threatening front four. You guys are just going to sit and play man and rush four against the Bills. The Bills are going to carve you up. You can't cover Diggs and Manny and Bees and all those guys like that. But weather was a very big factor, and it dictated a change in plan and a change in process. And I love the adjustment from the team and the execution based on top of that. So that was my biggest takeaway, along with the preparedness that the team showed coming into this game.
Yeah, I want to credit Leslie Frazier for some of that, of what you shared. I thought that their scheme and their plan was really sound in that, hey, Let's not let them get ahead of themselves. We know that they have one player on offense that can scare us. We have to have a plan around how to keep Brandon Cooks contained to go midway through the third quarter. Matter of fact, until Trey White came out of the game, he might have had one catch for 3 yards when they started to sub people out. So I thought that was really sound. And I actually think some of the times where fans were clamoring, and you brought up the most obvious example, Aaron, but there were other times where in other games we've seen McDermott go for it on fourth down or go for it instead of a field goal or whatever it might be. Many of those were simply because of the opponent and in the spots
taking the chances when you could.
Yeah, I had some people chiming in on my game day thread with a couple things. I said, hey, the Texans have 4 total yards right now.
Yeah.
Why would you risk a field goal is fine. Take the points. It's fine. Don't give them any
more
reason
the next
to
time,
have any momentum. We're just going to keep going down, score every time you get the ball, and it's fine. And we did. Like for the second, after we had the interception and then the 3 and out and the Matt Hawks punt. Those were the first 2 possessions of the first 4 plays of the game, and then we scored every other time we had the ball the rest of the game until the kneel down. Like it's really, really hard to go beyond that and to have a concern that do I wish that a couple of those weren't field goals? Sure, but I also think against a different opponent, some of those are a different decision, and that we don't decide the same thing. You have a different risk tolerance and a different willingness to be strategic with your risk when you know the opponent on the other side is more dangerous and you need to push the envelope. He should not only is Sean McDermott not going to, I don't predict, but you shouldn't make the same decisions against the Texans as you do against the Chiefs. They're different games and take different strategies. So from a coaching standpoint, I thought that it made perfect sense. He didn't need to press the envelope, and when you're scoring every other time you have the ball, it certainly was reinforced with many of those.
Yep.
So let's go around the horn here. Any final thoughts for the people? Anthony, we'll let you lead off. What were your final takeaways from the game and what you're looking forward to as we go forward?
I'm going to just drive home that last little point that you started to speak to in terms of the fourth down piece. I think it also goes hand in hand with the Dabel piece and the Bills running a little bit more. I don't think there's any one. You can be great at one thing, but you do not have the same game plan every single week and win football games. You can't just come on and be like, well, we passed it 50 times last week and won, so we're going to pass it 50 times every week and we're going to win. You have to vary your style to match the opponents that you play. That's the biggest thing for me, because leading into Kansas City, the Bills again are going to have to vary their style to beat this Kansas City team that is showing some signs of struggle on defense, but they're getting a little bit healthier. Their offense seems to have clicked a little bit more, and what has worked against the Kansas City offense has been man coverage with a too high shell over the top, which the Bills traditionally do not do under Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier. Goodness gracious. So it's nice to see going into this game what we have been accustomed to seeing with this Bills team, which is adaptability, variability, different game plans for different opponents, something that I hate to mention it, but something that we saw from New England so many times with Belichick and Brady. They would come out and it was like, well, Brady's going to throw all over him. And then it was like, nope, Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis is going to have 27 carries for 190 yards, and that's how they're going to win. I think that adaptability and variability is so important going forward because of the variety of opponents you're going to play. And it's going to be key going into this game against Kansas City, because there is somewhat of a blueprint that works against Kansas City. And if the Bills can adjust and adapt in order to beat them and, play with them, it would be something huge going forward for the rest of the season.
Aaron, how about you?
Yeah, right now I'm glad Bills seem to got their swagger back after that disappointing week 1. We're not at a quarter of the season anymore because it's not broken up into quarters, but a successful
they can't
first
stop me from calling it a quarter.
Yeah, a successful here first quarter of the season, and people will say, well, the Bills didn't play anyone, and so that's what next week's for, right? Next week is the measuring stick of the regular season, no matter how you slice and no matter where KC is at this point. So excited to see how they measure up against a better team, because I do agree with some people out there when they're saying, the Bills haven't played anyone, but they've dominated against teams that they should dominate against, and that's all you can do. You don't make the schedule, you got to go out there and beat the teams you should. They've done that, so there's nothing wrong with it, but now we get a good measuring stick game on prime time, so that's what I'm excited about, man. I can't wait to get back here on Wednesday night and chat with you about this preview show, because I'm going to dive right into this one. This is not a match. This was a matchup a month ago. I had it chalked up as a loss. It was one of those, hey, until I can prove I can beat you, I'm never going to take it. A month later, I feel way more confident that it's not just a guaranteed loss. I'm really excited about getting ready for this week. It's a big one.
Yeah, obviously we'll get into it more on Wednesday night, but I agree wholeheartedly. Both teams kind of needed, another get right game to be ready for it. I think both teams did that. The Chiefs ended up pulling away from the Eagles in what was a little bit closer of a game than what Buffalo had, but that's going to be interesting. And I think it's fun to step back and be okay to enjoy a game like today. Like, yes, would it have been great if they scored a touchdown every single time they touched the ball? Sure, but that doesn't happen in the NFL. The Bills have now scored the most points in the NFL. They have the highest point differential in the NFL. They're 3-1. I certainly wouldn't mind if they were 4-0, but if anybody, said that they weren't going to lose any games this entire season, I think you were, probably a little optimistic in that sense. So, a couple different guys here, even Puka brought it up here. The Titans lost to the Jets. Like, you can't take any opponent lightly. The Saints lost to the Giants. There were several games today that were heavy favorites from teams that ended up losing when they shouldn't have. To getting into that position, I think it's okay to be happy about a win like this. 40-0, just like with the Dolphins game, there was 35-0, and we're nitpicking things that could have been better. It's fun to be in that position now that the Bills are, by far the highest scoring offense in the NFL, the biggest point differential, a dominant 3-1 with an amazing defense that's going to be right up there for number one in the NFL in pretty much every metric across the board after the first three games we had, and then adding a topper like this on in the fourth game. This is going to be pretty incredible, the way that we do it. So certainly excited about it. Really enjoyed it. We want to say a big thank you to our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Download the Underdog Fantasy app, use promo code COVER1, get yourself $10 free. If you're looking for a vehicle, make sure to reach out to the guys over at West Herr. They'll take good care of you, and we're really excited about the fun stuff coming for Uncle Jumbo's. They're going to be launching their Niagara Frontier bourbon whiskey, their new storefront and tasting room that's going to be opening in Buffalo. Can't wait to go check that out. It's going to be a lot of fun. But on behalf of Anthony Prohaska and Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.